Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie The Gangster, The Cop, the Devil in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, friends. In today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called The Gangster, The Cop, the Devil. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I'm going to tell you. I am also going to give you all the information on which op platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film. And I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. The Gangster, The Cop, the Devil is a 2019 South Korean action crime film directed by Won-tae that is based on a true story. The film stars Dong-seok, Mu-yeol, and Sung-kyu. In the film, a gangster and a cop join forces to capture a serial killer for their respective purposes, but they face challenges from their respective enemies. The Gangster, The Cop, the Devil was released theatrically in South Korea on the 15th of May 2019 and was also screened in the midnight screening section at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival, as well as at the 2019 Fantasia International Film Festival. Plot: after a man's car is hit by a stranger, the stranger kills him as he takes pictures of the damage to submit to his car insurance. Jang Tae-seok is a cop who goes through the crime scene and suspects it to be the work of a serial killer, but his commanding officer does not believe him. Jang Dong-seok is a crime boss who, while on his way home after a meeting, is hit by the same killer, who tries to kill him as well. A brutal fight ensues, leaving both of them injured. Finally, the killer escapes after hitting Dong-seok with his car. Dong-seok is admitted to the hospital, and his henchmen assume that the attack was committed by a rival gang whom they counterattack. However, Dong-seok believes the killer was not a rival gang member, as his moves seemed to be random and purposeless. Tae-seok visits Dong-seok at the hospital and asks him to cooperate so that the police can catch the killer for him, but Dong-seok refuses. Instead, Dong-seok orders his men to find the killer. Using a sketch and Dong-seok's memory of the killer's license plate, they manage to find his car and a knife. Dong-seok eventually informs Tae-seok of the findings, and they decide to team up to catch the mysterious killer. Dong-seok agrees to provide manpower and cover expenses, but on the condition that the killer belongs to the one who finds him first. Dong-seok wants to kill him for revenge, while Tae-seok wants to arrest him in order to solve 5 connected murder cases and eventually get promoted. Meanwhile, Dong-seok orders his right-hand man, Kang-Ho to kill his rival Heo Sang-do with the killer's knife that already has traces of blood from the killer's previous victims. An enraged Tae-seok gets into a fight with Dong-seok upon learning what he has done, as the killing is confirmed to be the work of a serial killer, causing the case to be transferred to the major case squad. Dong-seok attends Sang-do's funeral. The killer also turns up and informs Sang-do's second-in-command that Sang-do was killed with the killer's knife, but by someone else. When Tae-seok and Dong-seok check the killer's car for any evidence, they are attacked by Sang-do's henchmen. A fight ensues, resulting in the death of Sang-do's right-hand man while in a fight with Tae-seok. Dong-seok gets him buried and clears the scene. Tae-seok gets assigned to investigate a kidnapping case and while solving it, spots the killer. A chase ensues, but the killer is able to escape. Through forensic tests, Tae-seok discovers the killer to be a missing person. He informs Dong-seok about this and lets him hear a voice clip to confirm the missing person is the killer. Later, Dong-seok helps a high school girl by giving her his umbrella, but soon learns that the girl has been murdered and his umbrella was found at the crime scene. Dong-seok and Tae-seok and their men start looking for the killer in the area where the girl was murdered and eventually find him in a car. In the ensuing chase, the killer manages to kill Oh-sung but is finally captured and incapacitated by Dong-seok. Dong-seok takes the killer away to torture and kill him, but Tae-seok tracks them down and crashes his car into the hideout just as Dong-seok is about to kill the killer. Tae-seok hits Dong-seok with his car and arrests the killer. The police have no conclusive evidence against the killer, Kang-Ho. As a last resort, Tae-seok asks Dong-seok, the sole survivor of the attacks, to testify. Simultaneously, Tae-seok threatens to release a tape of Dong-seok's confession of having Sang-do killed. During Kyung-ho's trial, Dong-seok arrives to testify and provides decisive testimony. Dong-seok successfully predicts the existence of a stab wound on Kyung-ho's body, previously inflicted by Dong-seok during their first encounter. Dong-seok also provides misleading evidence framing Kyung-ho for Sang-do's murder. The court sentences Kyung-ho to death. However, Dong-seok is also arrested due to his illegal activities. Tae-seok is finally promoted while Dong-seok is sent to the prison where Kyung-ho is kept, the condition which Dong-seok had requested Tae-seok to fulfill in exchange for the testimony followed by his arrest. Spotting Kyung-ho, Dong-seok gleefully enters prison. While Kyung-ho is showering, he is confronted by Dong-seok with a rope in his hand and a smile on his face. Cast: Dong-seok as Jang Dong-seok, Kim Mu-yeol as Jung Tae-seok, Kim Sung-kyu as Kang-ho, Choi Min-chul as Kwon Oh-sung, Heo Dong-won as Choi Moon-sik, Yoo Jae-myung as Heo Sang-do, special appearance, Yoo Sung-mok as An Ho-bong, Oh Hee-jun as Kim Dong-chul, Cha Soon-bae as Supreme Court Justice, Park Bo-kyung as victim's wife, Lee Eun-sem as high school student. Production. Filming. Principal photography began on July 31, 2018 and wrapped on November 18, 2018. Release: The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil was released in South Korea on May 15, 2019. The film will also be shown out of competition in the midnight screening section at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival. Reception. Critical response. The film received positive critical reviews. On review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds a score of 97% based on 34 reviews, with an average rating of 7/10. The critics' consensus states, an odd couple cop thriller with a twist, The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil tells its entertaining story with a blend of humor and hard-hitting. On review aggregator website Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 65 out of 100 based on 7 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Leslie Felperin of The Guardian stated, although its final act shreds credulity and the structure is a bit wonky, this pulpy crime thriller from Korea is still a real kick in the head. Like so many of the genre that hail from Seoul and its suburbs, this one punches well above its weight with an inventive reworking of well-worn plot tropes and slick production values. Jessica Kiang of Variety commented, Korea has dominated the midnight movie genre slots at international festivals so thoroughly of late that it's hard not to view Lee Won-tae's The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil in terms of its shortcomings in comparison to the likes of Train to Busan, The Age of Shadows, The Wailing, and so on. But what this fun, slick, but slightly forgettable hard-boiled actioner lacks in terms of the energy, originality, and inventiveness of a true Korean genre classic, it almost makes up for as a showcase for the burly charisma of star Don Lee, aka Ma Dong-seok. Carrie Darling of the Houston Chronicle added, Director-writer Lee Won-tae, for whom this is only his second feature, keeps the pace moving swiftly with this cats-and-mouse game, showing off an energetic sensibility that heralds a new voice on the South Korean film scene. It's no wonder that The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil, which was invited for a midnight screening slot at the recently concluded Cannes Film Festival, has been picked up by Hollywood for an English-language remake with Sylvester Stallone producing. remake. On the 5th of May 2019, it was announced that Sylvester Stallone and his Balboa Productions partner Braden Aftergood will produce the U.S. remake of The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil, with Dong-seok reprising his role and producing the film under BA Entertainment. As a fan of actor Dong-seok, whose previous works include stellar performances in films like Train to Busan, Along with the Gods, The Two Worlds, and Along with the Gods, The Last 49 Days, I had high hopes for The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil. Fortunately, this gritty Korean thriller did not disappoint. Plot overview. In The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil, a 2019 South Korean action thriller directed by Won-tae, the plot revolves around three central characters: a serial killer, a hardened gangster, and a determined cop. Jang Dong-seok, a ruthless crime boss, becomes the target of a killer, leading to a brutal encounter that leaves both injured. Detective Jung Tae-suk suspects the work of a serial killer, but his superiors remain skeptical. Reluctantly, Tae-suk and Dong-seok form an uneasy alliance to capture the elusive killer, each motivated by different goals: justice and promotion for Tae-suk, and revenge for Dong-seok. As they navigate a dangerous criminal underworld, the film is punctuated by intense hand-to-hand combat and knife fights, culminating in a high-stakes showdown. The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil offers a unique resolution that challenges traditional crime thriller narratives, making it a standout entry in the genre with compelling character dynamics and thrilling action sequences. A gangster you can't help but root for. Dong-seok's portrayal of Jang Dong-seok, the gangster entangled in a deadly game with a serial killer, was nothing short of exceptional. It's a testament to his acting prowess that I found myself rooting for the gangster more than the cop. Dong-seok's charismatic presence adds depth to his character and elevates the overall viewing experience. His fight scenes are undeniably the highlights of the film. He embodies the role of a powerhouse, requiring multiple adversaries to take him down, much like a formidable tank in the midst of battle. Notably, Dong-seok's introduction scene, where he knowingly unleashes his strength on a punching bag concealing a person inside, left a lasting impression, effectively setting the tone for his character's unyielding nature. Moreover, his strict adherence to his own set of principles, akin to the famous "professionals have standards" meme, showcases the layers within this gangster persona, making him a standout and intriguing figure in the movie's narrative. Combat Korean style. One notable aspect of The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil is its approach to action. Unlike many American films that rely heavily on gunfights, this Korean thriller delves into hand-to-hand combat and knife fights, which I personally find more engaging to watch. The fight choreography is executed with precision, adding intensity to the action scenes. One of my favorite fight scenes was when the gangster and cop find themselves forced to team up in a high-octane fight against a rival gang. This unexpected alliance brings a unique dynamic to the action sequences. There's a moment in the midst of the chaotic brawl when tensions run so high that the gangster and cop nearly attack each other. During the climax of this scene, the cop accidentally kills one of the attackers, leading to a profound dynamic and comparison with the gangster. The gangster, with a calm assurance, steps in to handle the situation and clean up the mess, highlighting the contrast between their roles and moral codes. The cop, unable to accept his actions, is left desperate and with no other choice than to let the gangster handle the cleanup. This moment adds depth to the characters and elevates the stakes of the action, making it not only visually appealing but also emotionally charged, further enhancing the overall impact of the film. A unique resolution. What sets this film apart is its ability to keep viewers guessing. Before they even caught the serial killer, I found myself pondering possible solutions where both sides could emerge victorious. To my satisfaction, the film's conclusion offered a unique resolution. The serial killer is sent to prison, and the gangster, too, ends up behind the same bars. In most of his scenes, the killer is seen smiling, adding an eerie and unsettling element to his character. Yet, as he observes the gangster being led into the very same prison he occupies, the killer's smile finally fades. This subtle yet impactful shift in the killer's demeanor signifies a turning point in the narrative. As is often the case in prison dramas, it leaves you with a sense of poetic justice, where the characters' fates become intertwined in a way that challenges their initial positions and expectations, ultimately delivering a satisfying and thought-provoking conclusion. Final verdict, 4 out of 5 stab wounds. In the end, The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil offers a thrilling and unique cinematic experience. Dong-seok's standout performance, combined with the film's focus on hand-to-hand combat, creates a memorable viewing experience. The movie's ability to keep you engaged and guessing makes it a worthy addition to the crime thriller genre. I would confidently rate it 4 out of 5 stab wounds, a testament to its ability to captivate and surprise. And so it's good news that Sylvester Stallone's Balboa Prods, which has already secured the US remake rights, have cannily kept Lee attached and slated him to reprise his role. It makes The Gangster, The Cop, and the Devil the rare foreign film that might actually be improved by its Hollywood makeover, given that it will retain its strongest asset and hopefully upgrade some of its weaker areas. Whatever the case, you needn't worry too much about parsing the differences between this perfectly serviceable action/buddy crime pick and its potential English-language counterpart. As undemandingly entertaining as it can be, it's highly unlikely you'll remember too much about it by the time the remake rolls around. Although its final act shreds credulity and the structure is a bit wonky, this pulpy crime thriller from Korea is still a real kick in the head. Like so many of the genre that hail from Seoul and its suburbs, this one punches well above its weight with an inventive reworking of well-worn plot tropes and slick production values. Supposedly, this was inspired by real events from a decade ago, but while the 2005 setting is mentioned, it's barely relevant. Writer-director Won-tae posits an unlikely alliance between rule-averse but goal-oriented cop Jang, Kim Mu-yeol, and seasoned crime world kingpin Jang, densely made but light on his feet Ma Dong-seok from Train to Busan, to catch murderer K, Kim Sung-kyu. Armed with what looks like a fearsome sushi knife and the haircut and cheekbones of a K-pop star, seemingly motiveless madman K has been killing motorists after minor fender-bending incidents for some time. But Jung's superiors scoff at the idea of an American-style serial killer in Korea. But when K attacks Jang one night and encounters a foe who typically pulls out people's teeth with his bare hands for fun, he not only fails to kill his victim, but creates another adversary set on revenge. Jung and Jang strike a deal to help each other to hunt down their common enemy, a cute premise that Lee manages to sell with enough sizzle and style to keep it from tugging at the logic threads too hard. There's a snazzy car chase through the city that smashes up assorted street carts and trash cans, and lots of yeasty, enthusiastic fisticuffs and bloodletting. Ma, with his natty suits and ruthless glare, brings heft and humor to the proceedings and easily upstages his pretty boy co-stars. It's rumored that Sylvester Stallone has snagged the remake rights, and it's easy to guess which role he might choose for himself. The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil is released in the UK on the 15th of November. A rogue cop and a ruthless gangster join forces to catch a serial killer in this South Korean action thriller. The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil is stylish and fun, with great action sequences to boot, but the central trio isn't as well-rounded as it should be. I've only ever seen Ma Dong-seok in 2 films, this and Train to Busan, and he was hands down the most awesome and memorable character in both. Here, he plays gangster Jang Dong-soo, who survives an attack by the film's villain, Kim Sung-kyu. Meanwhile, loose cannon cop Jung Tae-suk, Kim Mu-yeol, is convinced there's an active serial killer out there, but almost no one else in the department believes him. Desperate and eager to stop the killer before he strikes again, he strikes a deal with Jang Dong-soo. It's an uneasy alliance, to say the least. For one, each side wants to find the killer first, so that they can exact their own version of justice. It's a mix between working together and competing, and it makes for an interesting dynamic. The cops do the detective work, while the criminals provide the manpower. The gangster can send his many henchmen to scour the streets, knocking door to door, while the cops go over all potential leads. Ma Dong-seok is just staggeringly cool as the gangster, stealing every single scene he's in with ease. He's a big guy with an undeniable presence. I walked away from this movie with a strong desire to just go through his entire filmography. Whether he's ripping out a guy's tooth with his bare hands, or calmly ending a phone call after being punched in the face, Jang Dong-soo is the man. I mean, the fact that there's already an American remake in the works with Ma Dong-seok set to reprise his role says a lot about how much of an impression he makes. Kim Sung-kyu also deserves credit for his cold and unhinged villainous turn. This isn't the kind of story that really dives into the killer's psychology. In fact, he's kind of an archetype. Kim Sung-kyu takes a bunch of serial killer cliches and ramps it up to 11, which makes for a deliciously monstrous antagonist, a clever, credible threat to our unlikely heroes. The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil, is more about the cat and mouse game than solving a puzzle, and even then, it's certainly more over the top and bombastic than your typical serial killer hunt. Car chases, vicious and brutal hand-to-hand brawls, and larger-than-life personalities take precedence over looking for clues and piecing together motives. It makes for a very lively, entertaining, and easy-to-follow time. The weak link is the third main character, the cop. Kim Mu-yeol gives a fine performance, but the character is simply unlikable. He often makes rash, stupid decisions, and he also has the unenviable task of working on opposite sides with the extremely likable Gangster. It's also a little unclear if the cop is after personal glory or a genuine desire to see justice done. The cop stuff isn't all bad, but it's certainly lacking, and because the story gives equal weight to all three of its principal protagonists, that slack is keenly felt, especially at the very end. I audibly groaned when one awesome confrontation between the gangster and the killer was interrupted by the cop showing up and putting an end to it. The gangster, the cop, the devil is just too exaggerated to be taken all that seriously. This is a fun, pulpy action thriller, so I don't really feel bad that I'm rooting for the vicious crime boss to murder a demented serial killer. Shortcomings aside, I definitely had quite a bit of fun with this one. I'll keep an eye out on that American remake, although I don't exactly have high hopes. The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil is out now. Organized crime dramas are always a hit, almost as big of a hit as those about serial killers and the eccentric cops who hunt them. So what happens when these two genres intersect? You get the gangster, the cop, the devil, an incredibly fun romp that sits somewhere between The Departed and Ichi the Killer. While hunting for what he suspects to be a serial killer, a detective comes across his only survivor, a crime boss. Unlikely allies, the cop and the gangster do away with trying to beat each other to the finish line and team up to track down the stab-happy villain. The familiar themes are overlapped in a way that creates a very fun ride. The fight scenes are intense, the gangster scenes are terrifying, the tortured cop is believable, and the killer is downright scary. It manages to feel like each of these characters was plucked from their own genre movie and placed into this one, but never feels overstuffed or a parody. I love this movie. There's a moment later on in the film where the killer asks the gangster, "How are we different?" This is reminiscent of the moment in The Departed, where its gangster, Frank Costello, asks, "We can become cops or criminals." Today, what I'm saying to you is this. When you're facing a loaded gun, what's the difference? In both films, this sentiment sets up that gangsters and cops have more in common than you'd think on the surface. So the switching places and duplicity of it all make it difficult to distinguish good guy from the bad guy. The difference here is that, while in The Departed, it's difficult to distinguish good from bad and cop from gangster. Here, it's easy to mistake who the gangsters, cops, and good guys are, but there is no mistaking that the devil is the bad guy. Though you never let your guard down, because you sense the characters haven't either, you know exactly who to root for and which team is the winning one. This movie manages to stay tense for the entire runtime without ever feeling exhausting or overdone. The product of such a high-stakes situation with well-created and acted familiar trope characters, the tension feels real and never lets up. The film suffers a few continuity missteps, and the entire finale doesn't make a whole lot of sense, if any, but I am willing to forgive that for what a great time I had watching the film. This might not be a horror movie, but The Devil's Confessions are pure terror. I would not sleep on this hit. Rumor has it, there is an American remake in production, helmed by Sylvester Stallone, keeping actor Don Lee in his role as Gangster. Though American remakes, i.e. The Departed, can bring a lot to the table, you'd miss out to not watch this Korean film in its original form. Organized crime dramas are always a hit, almost as big of a hit as those about serial killers and the eccentric cops who hunt them. So what happens when these two genres intersect? You get the gangster, the cop, the devil, an incredibly fun romp that sits somewhere between The Departed and Ichi the Killer. While hunting for what he suspects to be a serial killer, a detective comes across his only survivor, a crime boss. Unlikely allies, the cop and the gangster do away with trying to beat each other to the finish line and team up to track down the stab-happy villain. The familiar themes are overlapped in a way that creates a very fun ride. The fight scenes are intense, the gangster scenes are terrifying, the tortured cop is believable, and the killer is downright scary. It manages to feel like each of these characters was plucked from their own genre movie and placed into this one, but never feels overstuffed or a parody. I love this movie. There's a moment later on in the film where the killer asks the gangster, "How are we different?" This is reminiscent of the moment in The Departed where its gangster, Frank Costello, asks, "We can become cops or criminals." Today, what I'm saying to you is this: when you're facing a loaded gun, what's the difference? In both films, this sentiment sets up that gangsters and cops have more in common than you'd think on the surface. So the switching places and duplicity of it all make it difficult to distinguish good guy from the bad guy. The difference here is that, while in The Departed, it's difficult to distinguish good from bad and cop from gangster, here it's easy to mistake who the gangsters, cops, and good guys are. But there is no mistaking that the devil is the bad guy. Though you never let your guard down because you sense the characters haven't either, you know exactly who to root for and which team is the winning one. This movie manages to stay tense for the entire runtime without ever feeling exhausting or overdone. The product of such a high-stakes situation with well-created and acted familiar trope characters, the tension feels real and never lets up. The film suffers a few continuity missteps, and the entire finale doesn't make a whole lot of sense, if any, but I am willing to forgive that for what a great time I had watching the film. This might not be a horror movie, but The Devil's Confessions are pure terror. I would not sleep on this hit. Rumor has it there is an American remake in production helmed by Sylvester Stallone, keeping actor Don Lee in his role as Gangster. Though American remakes, i.e. The Departed, can bring a lot to the table, you'd miss out to not watch this Korean film in its original form. My second movie on Day 3 of the Fantasia International Film Festival was the Quebec premiere of the South Korean crime thriller Akinjeon, literally Villain Story, aka The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil. The film opened in South Korean theaters on May 15th and was screened out of competition in the midnight screening section at Cannes on May 22nd. It then played in a handful of U.S. theaters in June. The film was written and directed by Won-tae. It stars Dong-seok, aka Don Lee, Kim Mu-yeol, and Kim Sung-kyu. Here's what The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil is about, copied from the Fantasia website. A mysterious wave of murder strikes the city of Cheonan. Tae-suk, a brutal policeman wreaking havoc on organized crime, is the only one convinced that this is the work of a serial killer, but his superiors remains deaf to his suspicions because of the randomness of the homicides. One evening, the gangster Dong-seok is attacked and left for dead, which accelerates Tae-suk's efforts to obtain glory by collaring the murderer, nicknamed K. It becomes imperative for the intimidating gang leader, who's up to his neck in a turf war, to restore his credibility by finding and punishing his aggressor. Thus, an unusual association is forged between cop and crook in the form of a twisted bet. They will share their respective resources, legal for one and not so much for the other, in order to get their hands on the killer. The one who succeeds first will be able to do what he wants. However, Kay has no intention of being captured and intends to increase the cruelty of his actions to taunt his new opponents. The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil is an excellent example of why I love Korean crime thrillers. The story was captivating, the characters were interesting, and the action was entertaining. It also shows a great deal of brutal physicality, several stabbings, and even has great humoristic moments. I really had a great time. Of course, the cast is top-notch to help carry the film. It starts with the most recognizable face of them, Don Lee, which you probably discovered in Train to Busan in 2016. He will apparently have a role in the future MCU film The Eternals. He plays the gangster beautifully by being both likable and menacing. The rest of the cast does a great job too. The print we saw tonight was provided by U.S. distributor Well-Go USA Entertainment. I assume they will release a Blu-ray and make the movie available digitally in the coming months. Additionally, it was reported back in May that Sylvester Stallone will produce a remake of the film with Don Lee reprising his role of the gangster. This high-concept Korean thriller, of course, evokes the good, the bad, and the ugly, as three larger-than-life characters engage in a tripartite feud that leaves a lot of bodies in its wake. The English title gives the gangster top billing, aptly since burly Ma Dong-seok gets the showiest role as Jang, a boss who is presiding over a fractious slot machine empire while fending off challenges from all sides. He's paid off the police higher-ups, but rogue cop Jung, Mu-yeol, insists on hassling low-level thugs and actually doing something about organized crime, even though he's assigned to the crimes of violence, murders, kidnaps, that take place outside the cozy circle of corruption. Pleased with himself after a sit-down deal, Jang opts to drive himself home without his entourage, and is targeted by Kim Sung-kyu, a serial killer who has no idea who his prospective victim is and has an MO of ramming lone night motorists from behind in a fender bender, then stabbing them when they stop to argue about insurance. The slab-bodied Jang survives the encounter and sets out to catch the killer to regain face, using his own sketch artist and dedicated crew, while Leung is vaguely willing to team up with his enemy to go after the lone maniac, even though he thinks Jang is the higher priority target, and the canny crook isn't above doctoring evidence to put off a bunch of gangland killings on the psychopath. Like a lot of Asian thrillers, this seems to have several extra acts, a kidnapping subplot, a courtroom drama finale, but come to think of it, so did The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The characters are vivid and their conflicts interesting, but they pretty much show who they are in early scenes and keep repeating the effect. The actors have the charisma to bring a bit more to the table, but the film powers on through its plot twists and bursts of high-octane action, accompanied by some inventively repurposed rock riffs, including a couple of splendid foot chases. I don't think it's quite up there with I Saw the Devil or especially The Chaser, but it's reasonably gripping. Written and directed by Won-tae. Plot. After barely surviving a violent attack by an elusive serial killer, crime boss Jang Dong-seok, Don Lee, finds himself forming an unlikely partnership with local detective Jung Tae-seok, Mu-yeol, to catch the sadistic killer simply known as K. Review. It was announced a few weeks back that Sylvester Stallone was going to be producing an English-language remake of South Korean movie The Cop, The Gangster, The Devil, so I just knew I had to see it ASAP. I can see why Sly is interested in the property as it's one of the best films of the year. It's essentially a slasher movie, meets crime drama, meets action flick with a gripping story and memorable characters. Dong-seok plays the gangster Jang Dong-seok and is easily the best character in the movie. He's tough as nails, incredibly ruthless, and yet you still take to him anyway, due to his charisma. The cop of the tale, Jung Tae-seok, Mu-yeol, comes across as rather arrogant, always pushing Jang and his men too far, even when they decide to work together to take down a serial killer who attacked Jang. This is one of those movies where you question just how bad the villain is and how good the hero is, which are my favorite types of stories. There is questionable morality, and as the killer says to Jang at one point, "What makes you think you're any better than me?" Which is a valid point. In terms of action, there are several fights and a car chase, but the highlight has Jang and Jung Tae-seok take on a group of goons in a garage, which is exhilarating and intense. Both the cop and the gangster reluctantly keep saving each other, and despite their differences, you can see they make a good team. It isn't short on violence, with the serial killer scenes coming across as disturbing, but never overly graphic, so I can see why this is getting the remake treatment. Sly would be great as the gangster if he decided to act in the movie. It moves at a fast pace, although it's not packed with action, and as I said, has more slasher elements, but I thought it spliced genres perfectly. The serial killer himself is incredibly creepy and has a habit of laughing in a mocking fashion, coming across a little like the Joker at times, and is a top-class villain. It's nicely shot with a wonderful sense of style and is a movie I will watch again very soon. It hits limited theaters this weekend, so if you get a chance to see it, then check it out. Overall, The Cop, The Gangster, The Devil is a must-see. It's a stylish and taut action-horror hybrid, and Jang Dong-seok is one of my favorite movie characters this year. The premise is simple. Circumstances compel vicious crime boss Jang Dong-seok, Ma Dong-seok, trained to Busan, to team up with cocky, hot-headed cop Jung Tae-seok, Mu-yeol, warriors of the dawn, to catch hipster serial killer Kim Sung-kyu, the outlaws. Each has their own motivations and drives that test this uneasy accord, as they use each other for the resources the other has and they don't. Everyone plays everyone else on some level. Twists and turns, betrayals and double crosses, and shifting allegiances and power dynamics abound. The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil doesn't revamp the procedural formula, but it offers solid, action-heavy thrills, tension and pressure, and moments of stark violence. A good comparison point is a light version of Na Hong-jin's 2008 film, The Chaser. While the villain is terrifying enough in the moment, creepy and leering, Kim has a sharp, sinister grin and unhinged eyes. K's killings are random and unmotivated. That's scary in one regard, but fails to capitalize on that fear, and from a narrative perspective, misses the chance to create strain and anxiety with calculated stalking and hunting. At times, he's more plot device than character. Fortunately, most of the screen time goes to Jang and Jung. Their antagonistic friction drives everything forward. Kim plays brash and arrogant well, picking and prodding and provoking until he gets the reaction he wants. It's no surprise Ma is great. He always is. But Gangster uses his skill set especially well. Calm and collected, he has a cold, cool menace, but also the physicality to drive home just how dangerous Jang is. Not in a highly skilled martial arts sense, but he has a raw edge, and when it comes down to it, he just tears through dudes in a primal, brutal way. The combination of mind and muscle helps him keep hold of his empire and makes him a nerve-rattling figure. Only his second feature, Lee has a strong grasp on the action elements, of which there are many. Plenty of car and foot chases make excellent use of the Seoul landscape, from the glitzy, glittery urban environments to the tangled, labyrinthine back alleys and hidden stairwells that snake through the city, juxtaposing upscale glamour with gritty streets. But it's the epic brawls that shine brightest. Multiple times he sends waves of humans crashing into one another in massive, sprawling throwdowns, clearly staged and meticulously executed. They should more than satisfy action enthusiasts. At times, there's too much going on and too many subplots that don't contribute to the primary narrative. We see gangland power struggles, police corruption, boss woes at work, and more. Some add texture, like illustrating the lengths Jang will go to or demonstrating Jung's impulsiveness, but eventually gets repetitive. We only need to see Jung butt heads with his superior, who's on the take from Jang, so many times to get the point. Even with a few rough patches, the Gangster, the Cop, the Devil bubbles with a propulsive energy. Polished and glossy, it moves along with an easy, rapid momentum, myriad action beats, and another top-tier performance from Dong-seok as a businessman brawler who provides a thoughtful sharpness to this fun, if familiar, crime thriller. Don Lee, Train to Busan, headlines this thoroughly engaging high-concept action thriller which, as the title suggests, brings together a gangster and cop to take down a sadistic serial killer. What it lacks in substance is compensated for by Lee's entertaining performance, more than a little reminiscent of his macho roles in the enormously successful Train to Busan and The Outlaws. Released in Korea on May 15th, ahead of its international premiere as a midnight screening at Cannes, The Gangster will seek to replicate the success of The Outlaws, with which it shares a production entity, BA Entertainment. An unlikely alliance between the legal and the underworld, creating an interesting dynamic in which both collide and synthesize in catching an increasingly dangerous murderer. Much like other Korean genre fare selected by Cannes, Lee Won-tae's actioner shouldn't have a problem finding an audience overseas, something which is illustrated by pre-sales to more than 100 territories. The recent announcement of a Hollywood remake to be produced by Sylvester Stallone's Balboa Productions, which will also star Lee in the same role, should further increase its profile. Set in the city of Cheonan, south of Seoul, in 2005, The Gangster casts Don Lee as gang boss called Jang Dong-seok. Late one night, he becomes involved in a minor car accident and is stabbed repeatedly by the other driver. Although he survives by fighting back, Jang is conscious that his image as a formidable gangster is at risk and is determined to hunt down his assailant for retribution. Jang is eventually approached by Detective Won-tae, Kim Mu-yeol, who is hunting for a serial killer known as K. At the beginning of the film, K intentionally causes a car collision to get the driver out of the automobile before murdering him. Although Jung's superior officer doesn't believe there is enough evidence to tie this murder to a series of cold cases, the dogged investigator persuades the gangster Jang, as the only living witness to his case, to team up in an unlikely alliance between the legal and the underworld, creating an interesting dynamic in which both collide and synthesize in catching an increasingly dangerous murderer. Visually, Lee Won-tae, Man of Will, takes the lead from many Korean thrillers, adopting a familiar aesthetic which exploits Cheonan's neon lights and dark roads as the rain continuously falls. He also brings some flair to the film's interiors, echoing A, which juxtaposes sinister moments with unlikely comedy. Kim Mu-yeol as the detective and Kim Sung-kyu playing the vicious serial killer are certainly notable in their respective roles, but the star of the show is Don Lee, aka Ma Dong-seok, who is becoming increasingly prolific at home, starring in scores of films, one of which was appropriately titled Unstoppable, 2018. While he may be at risk of overexposure, something that might hinder domestic box office for the gangsters, the film's simple concept and solid execution should enable it to find an enthusiastic audience, not least internationally. It's a generalization to be sure, but there are few things finer and more consistently entertaining than South Korean thrillers. From their focus on twisty narratives, knife fights, and frenzied fight action to their unrestrained tonal elasticity, their niche in the world of international cinema is more secure and reliable than most. The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil is the latest Korean export, and it's a slick thriller and a terrifically entertaining two-hander about enemies forced into an unlikely partnership to bring down a greater evil. It's also bloody great fun. Loosely based on true events, the film opens in the summer of 2005 as a late-night fender bender leaves the driver of the car that was hit, stabbed, slashed, and slaughtered in his own back seat. Det Jung-tae-seok, Kim Mu-yeol, has come to suspect a serial killer targeting random victims has staked out a hunting ground in the city, but his superior is having none of it. Jung is already in hot water for making random busts in crooked arcades run by mob boss Jang Dong-seok, Ma Dong-seok, aka Don Lee, who not coincidentally is paying off Jung's own boss for protection from just this kind of annoyance. Cop and gangster collide, though, when Jang is attacked by the killer and lives to tell the tale. He's a bit worse for wear, but he gives almost as good as he gets and sends Q scampering into the rainy night. Writer-director Lee Won-tae's The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil may not be a groundbreaking entry in the country's output alongside absolute gems like I Saw the Devil, 2010, Confession of Murder, 2012, or The Villainous, 2017, but it still exists in a realm well above most of the genre efforts Hollywood knocks out these days. From its compelling premise through its engaging leads and exciting action beats, the film is more often than not a captivating exploration of the blurry lines and varying gray areas between the law and those skirting it. There's some filler here in the form of montage scenes and office politics that slow down the film's momentum and energy, but the bulk is a stylish and fun ride into the night with two lovable assholes as our guides. 2. Because while both the gangster and the cop are given time and character to engage and interest viewers, the killer is intentionally left as a blank slate. A madman savagely murdering strangers on a whim is a frightening enough concept, but he's never allowed to be anything more than that. To that end, Kim Sung-kyu does a good enough job making his character look madly homicidal, but he exists more as a target for the other two than as 1/3 of the film. His best moment is a throwaway beat in a cafe as he watches a news report identifying a murder victim as one of his. "That wasn't me," he whispers to himself, and when a nearby diner overhears and looks up, Kim gives him the creepiest of looks. While Kay is one note as a character, Jung manages to be a few steps above. We've seen his brand of rebel cop before, of course, but he walks a fine line here between not giving a shit about the rules and caring just enough about the ideals of law and order. He's more than willing to bend restrictions, but when push comes to shove, and there is a lot of pushing, shoving, kicking, and stabbing here, his legion falls on the side of what's right. Kim Mu-yeol gives him just the right combination of swagger and earnestness so that his antics never feel overly familiar or dull. It's a fun enough thriller on its own merits, but the element that lifts it into the realm of the highly entertaining is Ma's performance as the big teddy bear of a gangster, who's just as likely to give his umbrella to a teen girl in a downpour as he is to pull a man's teeth out with his bare hands. He does both here, and Ma makes you believe this dichotomy lives inside this man. He's brutally pummeling a punching bag when we first meet him, and it's only after a couple minutes of fierce hits that his lackeys unzip the bag to reveal the bloodied man inside. He stole the show as a supporting player in Train to Busan, 2016, but here he is, the show. Reputation is everything to a gangster, he says by way of explanation as to why he need to catch the killer and make him pay, and it's enough to give him the greater arc over his cop counterpart. There's more at stake here for him, and Ma ensures that the gangster's more human side sits at the forefront, while still gifting viewers with a scene where he busts a door down on top of someone and proceeds to punch him repeatedly through the wood. It's glorious stuff. Directed by Won-tae, written by Won-tae, produced by Jang. CIO starring Dong-seok Kim Mu-yeol Kim's Cow Cinematography Park, edited by Hyo, Sun Han-young Chow, music by Jo Young, Wook Production Company B, Entertainment. Distributed by Kiwi Media Group, release date 15th, 2019, running time 109 minutes. Country South Korea, language Korean, box office $25.8 million. So guys, this is the review of the Gangster, the Cop, the Devil movie, and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.